Hello, fellow exiles. Today we're going over Unholy, Trinity, Kinetic, Blast, Pathfinder. We're using Master Distiller alongside Overflowing Chalice for Flask tech to give us a ton of flat fizz and chaos damage, and scale it with Unholy Trinity for big damage. The build cost is about 100 to 150 divines. We'll go into how to make it more expensive, how to make it cheaper, what else you could do with it. So what are the mechanics of this build? We're going to be doing 100% fizz convert to lightning, which we need for Unholy Trinity. We're then going to be using Master Distiller alongside Chaotic Might to get fizz as added chaos damage, which is going to give us an equal amount of fizz converted to lightning and fizz converted to chaos to make Unholy Trinity set enemies chaos and lightning resist to 0, as well as give us more multipliers on those damage, which is a huge benefit for using one support gem. The other key mechanic of this build is maintaining our flash charges for Master Distiller. Master Distiller is going to remove 3 flash charges from all of our flasks every time we use a skill. So we need to counteract this with a lot of flash charge gain. So how are we doing that? We're doing that with a combination of things, mainly Overflowing Chalice. This gives us 100% increased charges gain, as well as the Watcher's Eye mod, gain a flash charge on critical strike. This allows us to have almost full uptime on Master Distiller. We then use a couple other sources of charge gain to allow us to maintain Master Distiller even at 4 to 5 attacks per second. This is the current version of the build I've been playing at level 100. The big thing I want to point out here is it has a 550 DPS wand. So let's compare that to my mirror tier Kinetic Blast Deadeye POB and see what that looks like. This build has a 1 mirror wand and is doing very similar DPS. Also, we're using enemies, so we're gaining the benefit of an added skill gem in our 6th link. I'm not going to go in depth in comparing those two POBs, but they're very similar defensively and very similar offensively. Pathfinder version with Unholy Trinity is much less expensive, and you get very similar performance out of the two. There are pros and cons as well. One of the pros and cons I want to go into is the map mods. Pathfinder is more restricted on map mods. Really, the biggest difference is you don't want to run reduced flash charges gained. So we're going to go over the gear here. First things first is you need Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame Endless Munitions. This gives you 2 additional projectiles. We're stealing this from Deadeye. The build is going to feel a lot worse to play without this, and I got these for 2 and 4 divines, so not too bad there. We have some cluster jewels. This is a Storm Drinker it's refogged into a Fizz Gem to get Battle Hardened and Force Multiplier. You kind of need Storm Drinker. The lightning damage leached as energy shield gives you a lot of survivability that I feel like we need. It's too much running on this amount of life with no ES, and the ES will scale with Headhunter. There's a few more jewels. I'm not going to go over every jewel. Some of them are just like Corrupted Blood Jewel, and then we've got an Ancestral Vision for Spell Suppress and Ailment Avoidance. Pretty standard gloves here. The rest of the gear, I'm not going to go into everything in detail. This is pretty standard, like Kinetic Blast gear in the glove, boots, and helmet slot. Spell Suppress, Life, Evasion. That's pretty much what you want. Move speed on boots, attack speed on gloves. And then these are also Fizz Convert gloves. So we get 25 from the implicit, 35 from the prefix, 35 Fizz converted to lightning damage. And then we also get 40 from here for a total of 100% converted to lightning damage. Full disclaimer here, this is budget gear. This is not full endgame gear. There's a lot of room for scaling on this, and the POV that I showed in this video is on the budget gear. So this is about 150 divines probably. This wand, I think I already showed in the video, it's a 550 DPS, Fizz DPS wand, pretty cheap. I got it for 12 divines. This is Marauder's Fallacy. It is Volatile Valor, but it's not anything crazy. It's you probably get it for 5 or 6 divines. Death Rush, basically free. This ring, I think, was a few divines, less than 10, maybe 5 to 10. Headhunter's 10 divines. These other gear pieces are all probably about 10 divines, boots, helmet, gloves. The chest piece, I got pretty lucky on crafting this. It really only cost me about probably 10, 12 divines to make it. As an example, I'm probably going to do a video on this, but I just crafted this one, which is actually slightly better for like 4 divines. So I'll go over how to craft this in a video. If anybody has any questions on it, they can refer to that. That'll be coming out at a later date. But it's not that hard. It may look pretty hard to craft. It's really the tricky part is if you want to get good lightning res or good elemental res on it, you may have to spend more currency to keep trying to do that. But that's really the caveat. But it shouldn't cost you more than 20 divines to make a similar chest piece. Pretty standard as far as the gear, as far as a Kinetic Blast character. Really, the difference comes in with how we set things up for Unholy Trinity and the Flasks, which is more kind of on the tree. Okay, so I'm going to do a comparison of the POBs here real quick and just talk about what the build can do at the different levels. So let's start with the budget version. Let's go, there's different tabs here. Make sure you have all of them aligned. Let's talk about the budget version. So this build can probably do 20 to 40 to 60% deli. I was doing 60% on it, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't try to run tank mods on it on 60%. It can do 60% without tank mods. Once you start getting tank mods, it becomes a bit of a struggle. If it were me, I would probably just run the budget on 20% deli, maybe 40% if you don't mind dying. It's pretty squishy though until you get ramped with headhunter buffs. A couple things I want to point out here between the different versions. Our budget version, we're using Influence Chest with Explode. Mid version, we're using Nimis with a Ming's Heart, Progenesis, Dying Sun. That's the big differences. There's some change up to the cluster jewels. I'll kind of leave that up to you, to what you want to do with the cluster jewels, what passives you want to get. The big one you need is Storm Drinker. You can do whatever you want with the other cluster jewel passives. You kind of need Storm Drinker for ES Leech. That's about it. I have my build in here as well as an example. I'm not going to go over that though. I wouldn't bounce around between these. You have to move resistances around because when you change this up with Ming's Heart, you get a lot of chaos resist from this. And from the budget version, you lose a lot of elemental resist, so you have to kind of have gear on your other pieces for chaos res with this version of the build, with elemental res on your ring, whereas with the mid version, you get a lot of chaos and a little bit of elemental from Nimis on your rings, and you need to make up the elemental res on your gear. So it's a little bit tricky to navigate with that, but leave it up to you. I wouldn't jump from one version to the other. I'd kind of prepare for it. I'd kind of just pick one version that you want to go with and then go with that one rather than trying to move in between the two rapidly and try it out and then upgrade it. That's going to be a pain for you. You're going to have a lot of leftover gear that you're not using. So I wouldn't recommend that. I think I talked about what the builds are capable of. I'll leave it up to you. You could probably do 40 to 60% deli on the mid version relatively easily. If you want to scale it higher and go for 80, the build's capable of it. You can kind of gauge the difficulty and how it handles it. You might want to invest into a better wand for that. Maybe even go up to a mirror tier wand if you want to buy it and invest into this build with doing that. One final thing to note, make sure you keep your intelligence as your highest stat. It can be tied with dexterity, doesn't matter, but it needs to be the highest stat for your rational doctrine to work so you can get chaotic might and malediction. And that's about it, guys. That's the build. Reach out if you have any questions. Join the Discord. I'll be streaming a lot lately on Twitch. And that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching.